how the West was won. Solid goaltending, depth in scoring, 6 goals from the captain, Rick Nash. It also led to 3. Lyle Odeline, well-traveled throughout his playing career, but earned a much-deserved Stanley Cup championship in Montreal back in 19. Certainly for Xavier, they've had some close games so far this season. 4 of the 6 losses have been by 5 points or less, but a dominating performance here with that 36-point win Thursday over Duquesne. Well, I think this is all that came up during pregame warm-ups. Just really small clumps, not the big turf clumps that you normally see when it's wet. This field is probably in the best condition it's going to be all weekend.
Absolutely, great point. We'll ask you about that, Cameron, that forced fumble there on Vince Young. What did you see? Got a great shot in on him and forced the fumble.
Well, I was just able to
Colorado coming in after a homestand in which they went 2-2, and one of those victories was against the Blue Jackets back on October. Their last preseason game was last Friday at Carolina, so plenty of rest, and they will need it with 3 games in the next 4 days, 4 games in the next. This is a team that for the first time in their franchise history won a playoff series last year. They beat Anaheim in 6 games. Pekka Rinne, maybe not the greatest in the postseason, but certainly he is among the top, become a premier goaltender. Going into that early hole, St. Louis jumps out to the 2-0 lead, but again, the Blue Jackets show some perseverance tonight and come back and win this one by the final of 5-2. This is all that came up during pregame warm-ups. Just really small clumps, not the big turf clumps that you normally see when it's wet. This field is probably in the best condition it's going to be all weekend. They kept the tarp on here until about 10:30, pulled it off, and again, it looks fantastic down here at field level. The concern defensively, though, is footing and tackling when the weather is wet. Offensively, the ball being slick. They're going to try to keep the ball dry. Both these teams love to pass, although North Carolina Central would really love to establish.
And the Raider defense did a good job. Cameron Wembley with a sack, force, and a fumble. Our Ray Crawford has Cameron right now. Go ahead, Ray.
Absolutely, great point. We'll ask you about that, Cameron, that forced fumble there on Vince Young. What did you see? Got a great shot in on him and forced the fumble.
Well, I was just able to get up.
I know you were focused on stopping Chris Johnson, forcing Vince Young in the passing game to try to beat you. How much of a challenge is it to face a quarterback as talented as Vince Young? It really brings that third dimension to an offense when he's able to run the football.
Well, you definitely have to prepare for it.
Tom mentioned in his post-game comments about a lack of attention to detail. Did you feel that way as well, and what can you guys improve on heading into that game against the Rams next week? All right, Cameron, best of luck. Thanks for taking the time with us.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Cameron Wembley, not only that forced fumble, but 5 tackles today for the Raiders, guys.
Ray, thanks very much.
Hello again, everybody. Alongside Bill Davidge, I'm Ray Crawford. Well, a 3-day break, rare for the Blue Jackets in their schedule. They should be rested and ready to go against the top team in the Northeast Division, a team that could be a little bit weary. They played just last night. And, of course, you combine that with Columbus's improved play, and, Bill, that could be a recipe for 2. And he's facing a Maple Leafs team that's been playing pretty good this season. They've won 4 of their last 6 games. As I mentioned, #1 in the Northeast Division. Most recent win, though, coming last night against New Jersey, in a game that Joffrey Lupul will not soon forget. It looked like everything was tilted toward the Blue Jackets' favor. They score first. More times than not, they win. They have a lead after the second period. They're undefeated. Well, they did score first. How about R.J. Umberger? A great odd man rush there. A great feed from Fenner Tootin. That made it 1-0 as he beat Brian Elliott. It would stay that way into the second period. And some pressure here applied by the Blue Jackets. Chris Clark pokes it free to Sammy Paulson and doesn't hesitate. He shoots and scores. That made it 2-0 Blue Jackets. You got the sense this team was playing like they should win this game. More insurance later. Christian Huselius to Rick Nash. He scores his team-leading 18th of the season. That made it 3-0, and a victory almost seemed certain. But then the Sens start to chip away a little bit. They pulled into Mike Fisher, scores his 11th of the year for Mr. Carey Underwood. That made it 3-1, and so they were within 2 goals here at the end of 2. Now, in the span of less than 2.5 minutes between the end of the second and here in the early part of the third, they made it a 1-goal game. Jesse Winchester to Nick Foligno, and he scores. That made it 3-2. Senators starting to believe that they can make this thing happen and tie it, and indeed they did. But Brent, the extra attacker, they pull the goaltender, Daniel Alfredson. He scores. That tied the game at 3, and it will remain that way through the final moments of regulation, and it goes into overtime. Time for 4-on-4 hockey, and here is the big story of the night. Jake Voracek taking advantage of another Ottawa turnover, mishandling the puck in their own zone, and Voracek capitalizes, and he finds just enough space to sneak that puck in between the pads of Elliott, picking up the game-winning goal. Well, interesting. We talk about the importance of scoring first. The Blue Jackets 1-2 in the last 3 games in which they scored first in that 1 win. They needed overtime to beat Ottawa. So again, that first goal not the only thing anymore. Scott O'Neill wants to see a full 60-minute effort out of his hockey club, and hopefully they get that tonight and snap this 5-game losing streak. This series was the start of the downturn back in November. Hopefully the start of a turnaround tonight. John will stay here at the desk. Jeff Rimmer, Bill Davidge will join him as the Jackets begin the first of a back-to-back and a home-and-home against one of the top teams in all the National Hockey League. It's the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings coming up right here on Fox Sports Ohio.